Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'll be talking about a fighter who basically became a ghost. And that fighter is Amir Sadollah. Amir Sadollah was one of those weird cases of a fighter who began his career in the UFC. He started his UFC career at 0-0-0. No wins, no losses, no draws, no contests. He came into the UFC from the Ultimate Fighter. He beat several fighters that would go on to have relatively decent success in the UFC in both middleweight, welterweight division, and maybe even up above those weight classes. He beat some fighter in his first fight by Steve Burns. Then he beat TKO'd Gerard Harris. Then he beat Matt Brown, who's went on to have great success in the welterweight division. Submitted him by triangle choke. Then he beat CB Dollaway in the semifinals by armbar. And then he's supposed to fight Jesse Taylor, who we all know was kind of fell out of that fight because he went wild at Vegas, was kicking out like limousine windows. So he had to fight CB Dollaway again and submitted him by armbar again, but even quicker this time. Then he kind of had on and off success in the UFC. He didn't lose to anybody that you would say is really that bad, or anybody that's like, he was competitive and he beat some good names, lost some good names, a 6-5 UFC record. But it seemed like at times he would just fight one fight a year, or then skip a couple years, or really was like he really just fight one fight a year. And it seemed like he was never that active, or he ever really wanted to be that much of a fighter. But the names he beat had went on to be good. It's like if he really was like in it for the MMA, or he really was like had a love for MMA and was more motivated or more into it, you kind of wonder where his career could have went. He was talented. He had solid striking. He was well-rounded, especially at that time when he was fighting, or when he was one Ultimate Fighter. He was kind of ahead of the game. I know the game has evolved since then, and probably what was good back then is not as good now. But if he would have kept the same like momentum and kept training and kept his focus on and was been in there more active, and you see these fighters like Matt Brown, he could have easily been just as good or better than Matt Brown if he would have kept around and kept training and kept fighting. He could have been like moved up and been just as successful as CB Dollaway at middleweight. Maybe CB Dollaway is just a little bit bigger, but if he kept training and it had the same, like, it was adapting to the game that quick and that little bit of time, he'd easily, if he would have put the focus in it, he could have been just as good as CB Dollaway at middleweight or better. So just all these fights he fought, and even some of the fights he lost to, he could have went on to get better than him. Because a lot of times fighters fight, and maybe at that moment they aren't the better fighter on the night, but they keep focusing, they learn from their mistakes, and they go back, they train, they get out, and they have fights, they build themselves up. A lot of times those fighters will pass the fighters who are maybe at that moment were better than them, but that's too hypothetical. But all I'm saying is Amir Sadollah certainly could have had a better career than he had, and it's certainly less weird career if he would just stayed active. Even fighters like, he pretty much ran through, like Peter Sabata was able to come back and had relative success in the UFC when he returned. He wasn't like that big a name when he first was in the UFC, but he came back, and now he had better success than the first time around. And Amir Sadollah, if he would have kept training, he could easily been a couple times better than Sabata. But he kind of just faded off the scenes, became a ghost. He was had one of the better runs of Ultimate Fighter history. All finishes throughout, from his very first fight in the Ultimate Fighter House all the way to winning the Ultimate Fighter House, nothing but finishes. He was a talented fighter with a lot of potential, a high ceiling. But I guess in reality, he never lived up to all that talent and all that like potential he had. He just kind of sat on it. Maybe he didn't have the love for the game. He never really commented on why he left the UFC. I mean, why he just was so inactive, or if the UFC cut him, he didn't really comment on why he was outside the UFC so long. And basically, reason he got cut from the UFC was because he was inactive. He was on the roster for 2 years without fighting. That's the only reason he was cut. But he never really commented on why he was so inactive, or whether or not he had love for the sport, or whether he was interested in being the best fighter he could be. His Twitter page really doesn't really explain much. There's no real background or anything for why he just became so inactive, and his story just basically ends where it ends. It's just a blank page there. So that's pretty much the book on Amir Sadollah. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.